everybody, welcome back to the K2N Online Paddle School. We are back here on YouTube, and this week we're talking about the paddle length for your canoe style paddle, whether it's a dragon boat, outrigger canoe, or any single blade discipline, and understanding power potential. We have a video on sizing your outrigger canoe paddle based on your limb leverages with the torso, the arm, and your seated position in relation to the water. A dragon boat sits lower, an OC6 sits higher. The length of the paddle is going to vary based on the boat that you're in. Today we'll go into some more specifics of exact leverages that we're looking for with our limb lengths. Last week we did a video on power potential, looking at the kayak paddles, specifically the wing blade paddles. In the world of canoes, if you were to make your paddle 5 or 6 inches longer than what is necessary for your boat schematics, the paddle is almost inoperable. It is either super long at the bottom of the paddle or your arm is way over your head. One of the reasons that the length of the paddle for the canoe blades is so much more impactful is because of the angle of approach that we have. Everything occurs closer to our body, with the blade traveling near the boat. Because of this, these leverages, you feel them much more. Dialing in exactly how long your canoe paddle should be for the situation that you're in is imperative for maximizing your results. When looking at the length of the paddle, we want to try and prioritize having both arms at about 90 degrees. This would be holding the paddle in a bench press style way. You have the paddle on the top of your head like so, and both arms are roughly 90 degrees. When you make the paddle longer or shorter, the distance between your pinky and the tip of the blade is either going to lengthen out for a longer paddle or shorten for a shorter paddle. This leverage here is dictated by the length of our clavicle, the length of our elbow to shoulder. All of our limb leverages here are going to dictate how we wield the paddle. There is some wiggle room here, having the hand slightly closer or slightly further, but there is a range here. You would never want to be way outside of that range here, or you're not using the tool properly. So defining power potential is the amount of leverage that you are finding in the water. The potential of the power can be defined by the distance between your pinky, the tip of the blade, and the shape of the blade. All of these things are contributing factors to the amount of power and the potential that you can tap into. The distance between the pinky and the tip of the blade, the further into the water the blade is submerged. The deeper the wide part of the blade is in the water, the more leverage you're going to find, which increases the power potential. So the closer your bottom hand is to the blade, the more shallow the blade will go in the water, and you have less leverage on it and less of a power potential. If I wield a very long paddle, I can keep the leverages that I want here, and the distance between the pinky and the tip of the blade is very far. I would have a very large power potential with this paddle specifically. With this paddle, right, I have my arms in the same configuration, and the distance between my pinky and the tip of the blade is much less. So my power potential is much smaller. And looking at these paddles side by side, you can see how much longer this paddle is, and the extra length is added to the distance between the pinky and the tip of the blade. Holding the paddle wider changes your leverages on the paddle, and it's usually always in a disadvantageous way. By holding my bottom hand closer to the blade here, you can see that my arm goes way over my head. That's just one example of how your body will morph around the paddle if you let it, but we want to try and keep very specific limb leverages in our advantage and then let the tool dictate the other aspects. So this conversation came up thanks to Megan Roberts, who is one of the co-coaches for the US Premier Women's Dragon Boat team. And so in that format, they have dragon boat specific time trials that they do in outrigger canoes. And one of the ideologies is in a sprint time trial format, you should use a longer paddle to get more leverages and tap into this higher power potential for a better result. On paper, it makes a lot of sense, right? Longer paddle, more leverages, more speed, better results. It's a very one-to-one transition. But like everything in life, it's not quite that simple. The most important way to look at power potential is maximizing the power potential to mirror your power output. If you are using a very large blade that is very long and your boat speed does not reflect that, it means that the tool can be hindering your overall speed. Extra length is more leverage if you can utilize it properly. Extra length at the front of the stroke is excellent, but if it bogs down your movement and slows down your stroke rate, now it becomes a negative. Having a stroke is staying fluid and dynamic from the front of the stroke to the back. If you are being slowed down by too much power potential, then it means that it is now counterproductive. For the majority of racers, they don't need more power potential to go faster. They just need to harness the motion and leverages that they have at their disposal to maximize their result. Looking at the canoe stroke, we want to prioritize our body's position as we're taking the strokes. If the paddle morphs our body position in a negative way, everything is going to be lost. You can see how this would spiral. You can't power the stroke because you're now out of position with a paddle that is too long. And as you're going through the stroke, it is slow in the front because it's too much force. Your body can't deal with that pressure in a meaningful way. And getting through the rest of the stroke, it's very taxing, it's very slow, and then exiting the blade is clunky. All these things begin to spiral, which are going to be detrimental to a time trial performance. Some of the leverages that we're looking for is making sure that the top hand is in a very specific position when the entire blade is submerged in the water. So looking at the ball here, when my blade tip touches the ball, this signifies the whole paddle is in the water. As I'm in this position, my top hand is at eye level, right? And this means that as I lean forward, I can get my body weight and leverages on this paddle. It's a very specific thing that I'm looking for, having this top hand about eye level, maybe slightly above, maybe slightly below, but our ability to get our weight over the paddle in the seated position is very crucial to be in a very specific top hand position. With the paddle that is too short, as I'm in this position, my blade is not touching this ball to get my top hand to eye level. Now I have to drop this position and my knuckles are about nose level here, which means that I'm not maximizing leverages that I'm looking for. Now by making the paddle longer to find more leverages, as my blade tip touches the water here, you can see that my top hand is now over my head. When I initiate contact with the water and my top hand is over my head, as I lean forward, my body weight is not over my hand because my hand is over my center of gravity. So as I lean forward, I can get weight maybe on my bottom hand, but I can't get weight on this top hand until I start to get further into the stroke where my top hand is now eye level. This means that that initial contact with the water where the whole blade is submerged is very weak until this top hand gets into better position. It's an example of the stroke being bogged down at the front from poor leverages. The potential of power with a longer paddle is much higher. In theory, I'm finding way more force with this longer paddle, but my ability to utilize it with my body leverages is very limited. In the world of Dragon Boat, it is a standardized blade that everybody is using for this time trial metric. So making sure that you're matching the leverages that you're looking for as you're going through the stroke, this is the key. The stronger you are as a paddler, the more you can travel through these different power potentials. If you are in the premier age category, for a male especially, your power levels are likely on the highest end that we are measuring. So making your paddle an inch longer may pay off because you can deal with these additional leverages for a very short duration. Looking at senior B and senior C and potential senior D ladies that are trying to go through these same time trial metrics, going the additional length likely is not a benefit. Power potential is too great. Most of the stroke starts to devolve around having a tool that puts them out of position. Excellent. So the ultimate way to figure out the exact length that you want is by trial and error. Using a metric to measure a paddle will give you a rough approximation, but time and mileage and commitment to the vessel that you're paddling in with the tool that you have, these are the things that will help you fine-tune these ideas. I have literal different length paddles for different paddle crafts. I am that neurotic about a boat. When I'm in a specific OC2, I have a 48. When I'm in my OC1, I have a 49. When I'm in my OC6, I have a 50. And when I'm steering the OC6, I have a 49.5. Whatever it is, you want to try and prioritize the leverages that you have available to yourself. If the paddle is a ½ inch or an inch in one direction or the other, it will not ruin your stroke. But if you're trying to add on 4 or 5 inches, to a paddle thinking that it's a benefit in any context, you will have a rude awakening. Having a paddle that is adjustable and changing the adjustability and spending time at each different length will help illuminate how effective of a tool it is for you to reach your goals. And speaking of reaching your goals, don't forget the K2NOnlinePaddleSchool.com. We have 300 videos to help you with your kayak stroke, your canoe stroke, dragon boat time trialing is a small 101 series on the school, steering in OC6, you name it, it's on the online school. There's a lot of content to fine tune and help you understand all of these small ideas that come together for big results. Making sure your paddle is the proper length is one small part of the entire equation of using your top arm and bottom arm and your hips, using your legs, connecting the whole body, the catch, the power, the exit, the recovery, the setup. There are so many aspects of the stroke to understand, to conceptualize, and to use to your advantage every time you take a paddle stroke. To go along with that, we also offer training plans on the online school. They're individualized specifically for what you're looking for. Send us an email telling us about your goals, how often you can train, how you track your workouts. I will review all of that and send you 2-week micro blocks of training program exercises. We confer with each other, and I'll send the next 2 weeks, and we put these little microcycles together to make big results in the long term. Getting structure for your workout is the key to taking steps forward in being better on the water. Thank you all so much for the support here on the YouTube channel. We are trying to add all kinds of content here. We have the Paddle Pursuit podcast with some very interesting and cool paddle people to give some perspective of the community at large. If you haven't subscribed, don't forget to do so. Thank you all so much for the support, especially our YouTube members. If you are a YouTube member, your name will appear here. See you all next week when we have our next paddle tip video.